सुनो मेहर बाबा की खामोश बानी, इसी में है सब आशिकों की कहानी। सुनो मेहर बाबा
Jai Baba. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the virtual presentation on the new life. We are here at Meher Spiritual Center, connecting with Dr. Ward Parks in Hyderabad. We are very fortunate to be able to share about Meher Baba's life and message through this virtual presentation platform. And Ward, for the past number of months, has agreed to be able to help us go deep diving into this very important part of Baba's life, known as the new life. So without further ado, I'd love for us to go into session 13 in the meeting at Hyderabad. Ward?
Thank you, Susan. Yes, this launches the final great movement, I would say, of the new life. It was at this meeting to which Old Life followers were invited, a select group of 75. The Baba announced and declared Mananash for the first time, and that defined the new life for the next 8 months until it came to its culmination at the beginning of February 1952. This was the second of the meetings, large meetings to which Old Life followers were invited. A previous session, we covered the meeting in Mahabaleshwar on 16th October 1950. Well, this was 10 months later, June 1951 in Hyderabad. Now, I wanted to start with I suppose you could say a digression, but it's not really. But to examine a question about the new life, I want to give, I guess I'll just say it's my own understanding or my own interpretation. I haven't done very much of that, but it's a major question about the new life, and Ramju Abdullah raised it in some of what we went over last time. If you saw that session, you may recall he was asking, was Meher Baba had he really become an ordinary man, or was he just playing the role? And he gave some of his observations, reviewed some scenes with Baba very insightfully, and clearly seems to have come to the conclusion that Baba had really done that. He had really become an ordinary man. Now, this is a question that the great philosophers and sages and mystics will be discussing for 700 years. How can this happen? In previous discussions with other Baba lovers, there have been some who feel that Baba actually knew that he was God, knew that he was the avatar, but he played this role for others. So that's a view that you can certainly hold, and there's no, it's quite on the table to take a view like that. I myself do feel that it was part of Meher Baba's avataric work to put himself into a state where he was severed from that self-knowledge of himself as God. There's so much we could say about this over the course of his entire avataric career. What does the avatar mean? But just some small observations on this point. I feel that part of avatar means knowing and not knowing at the same time. If you have a completely dark space, no light anywhere, and suddenly a brilliant bright light is turned on, well, the darkness is annihilated, right? It's done away with. if his infinite knowledge was all that there was in the avatar, well, how can this creation endure that attack, so to speak? This creation is nothing but ignorance, is nothing but not knowing. So I feel that part of his becoming the avatar means that he has to both know and not know at the same time. This is a question that Erich used to indirectly address all the time in the 70s when I first was going there, about how Baba would seem not to know things in very obvious ways. A mother would bring a newborn baby and hold it before Baba, the baby completely naked, and Baba would look absolutely charmed and say, "Is it a boy or a girl?" Right? A completely naked baby. Something that anybody else would know. Okay, maybe he was playing a role. Often he was playing a role. But I do think it is essential to his becoming the avatar to actually establish himself in our condition, really and truly. And here's some charts on relating to this topic that I would like to show. This was from a booklet that Baba had published in one of his own books in 1943 on the divine theme. And this chart shows the development and differentiation and individuation of the false self. You see, that's going to be the false ego is going to be one of our topics we get to later in the session. From the very beginning, in stone form here, where it's very primitive, up to human form, where it's highly differentiated into these different layers, or koshas is a word used in Indian psychology. The outermost three, we could spend, really, it's a fascinating topic. We could spend a long time just on this one chart. But the outermost three layers in ordinary humans are, if you take the time to go through this closely, the gross body, the subtle body, and the mental body, right? And then there are other layers inside of that. Well, the reason I'm bringing this up is that here we see depicted a God-realized person. And by this, he really means a sadguru or a perfect master. Just to illustrate the point, here's the chart, the 10 States of God, published 12 years later, 1955. And you see exactly the same representation of the God-man and the man-God. That is to say, both perfect masters and sadgurus. Okay, well, here are the layers that are, this you could say is an analytic portrait of the avatar and the perfect master, what they're comprised of, right? The outermost three levels are the gross body, the subtle body, and the mental body. You see those three layers, outermost, gross body, subtle body. Okay, the avatar and the perfect master shares that with us. We have those too. But now we get into things that differentiate 10th state of God folk, perfect masters and avatars, from ordinary people. He has a universal body, a universal mind, an unlimited divine ego, and infinite consciousness. And at the center of all of that is self with a capital S. Okay, well, here's part of how I understand what Baba did during the new life. In fact, let me go back to when he was a boy. The perfect masters veiled him to the knowledge of his real self. So I would suggest that Merwan Shariarani as a boy, had gross body, subtle body, mental body. All the rest he was unconscious of. He was veiled to. Well, I'm thinking that as part of his avataric work in the new life, he made some kind of a move to veil himself, to cut himself off from the knowledge of those four inner rings, right? Universal body, universal mind, unlimited divine ego, infinite consciousness. He acted so as to cut himself off from knowing that. He put a veil there. I don't know how he does it. It's, part of the art of being the avatar. So that he really, in my understanding of this, he really didn't have that knowledge. He truly didn't. It was an act. It was a step he took. And at the end of the new life, he recovered that knowledge of himself as God, as the old life Meher Baba. He reunited with the old life Meher Baba. We'll see that theme coming up today. And it seems to me this is for broad interpretation of why he did this. Of course, I couldn't know. I'm just an ordinary gross conscious soul, so it's not as though I have any special knowledge. These are just my own ruminations. That the master role, mastery with a capital N, was a bit weighed down with traditions. This would be very much true in India, where most of the masters have been. But there was a lot of protocol and ritualism associated with it. You go to a master and you bring flowers and sweets and a coconut, etc., etc., etc. You speak in a certain way. There's all this bhakti devotional custom. And I think it had weighed down that role of master. Also, the idea, that archetype of the master was kind of a top-down imposition a bit, where the master is being imposed on the culture at large. I think Baba wanted to change that. He wanted to get away from a lot of that, to lighten the load. He did continue to insist on obedience. That was there. But the rest of it he wanted to to do away with. And there's something more than that also. By cutting himself off from the knowledge of himself as God, from those four inner ring koshas, those layers that I was showing you, where he's just conscious of gross, subtle, mental, right? Like an ordinary man would be, to the degree that an ordinary man would be. He actually participated in our experience. I mean, I may analytically, intellectually know that I'm God, because I believe it to be so. But I don't have that gnosis. I don't have that experience. It's just a belief, right? He had to actually share in that experience of ours, of not knowing, so that he could really and truly occupy the role of avatar, where he had for himself done it, not just as a boy, but as a grown adult trying to live this spiritual life. So that if he says that he's Susan or he's Naman or he's Ward, it's not just condescension trying to be nice to us. No, he himself did that. And that becomes part of his avatarhood, which he is going to declare at the end of the new life. Okay, so there's a little bit of an interpretation from me, just my own understanding of what this was about and why he did this. I mean, would Meher Baba have had the analytic, discursive knowledge that he was God because he was a drop in the ocean? Of course, but that's not the same thing as the direct, immediate gnosis, I am God, the I am God experience. And I do accept what Baba said, that he had cut himself off from that as part of this avataric new life work. Okay, so now coming into this meeting at Hyderabad, which culminated the 28th to the 30th of June, the whole thing began a bit earlier than that. It began with the trickling in of a first few. On the 20th, we have the arrivals of Ramju Gani Babadas and Adi Sr. Ramju, of course, was arrangement wala. Gani Babadas and Adi Sr. had been companions. Now they were old life as of the October 16th meeting. 3 days later, Nariman Meraji, they were both arrangement walas. Dr. Deshmukh and Dake Falkar, these are very prominent Old Life disciples, came. And on the 28th, a much larger group came. It did include some newcomers, like some of these people from Hamirpur. We mentioned Pukar in a previous occasion, who met Baba at the Mahabaleshwar meeting, and Keshav Nigam and various other people. This was by invitation only. Here is a little bit of what our main source, most important source for much of this, is once again Ramju Abdullah's little pamphlet, The God-Determined Step. I'm just holding up the book right here. One of the really significant sources about the new life. I read from it last time some of his comments on Baba's work with the musts and poor in November and January. But now when we come into this June meeting, his is really the one developed account that we do have. And here are some of the comments that he made about some of that earlier work and how it fed into what's following. He says, I was invited to join Baba at the end of January, etc. And he heard Baba say, my work that I have just, finished at Hyderabad, that was the work with the musts, was most successful and absolutely to my complete satisfaction. That and the work that I have now to carry out in Bombay, this is more work with musts, right? He stayed at Nariman and Arnavas's apartment, Ashiana in Bombay, and did this must work there, have 100% connection with the 100 days seclusion that I have planned to go through shortly. If the Bombay work also proves to be as good as that done in Hyderabad, no power can then thwart the success that I desire to achieve through the 100 days seclusion. If all that is fulfilled, I feel that Badi Vato Nikal Avid Jase, there will be an end to all the problems. Afterwards, according to what Baba told me, he was so much satisfied with his work in Bombay as to consider it to be completed 100%, while Baba's own statement and its elucidation, published under Circulars 25 and 25A, needs no comments. We read that last time. And in fact, at the June meeting, Baba said the work in the 100-day seclusion was completed again to his 100% satisfaction. So this work with the musts and the poor seems to have streamed right into the work in the 100-day seclusion. That led to his declaration of the need for the God-determined step, which now he is going to elucidate here at Hyderabad. What is the God-determined step? Mananash. And the remaining part of the New Life from October until February was his enactment of Mananash. So look at this. From the October meeting, 1950, right through to the end of Mananash, it appears to have been one continuous stream of work on Baba's part. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. Over the first year, Baba was really trying to live the new life with companions. But when you look at this work, no one else could have done it, really. I mean, no one else would have had the slightest idea what it entails or what it was about. So it seems to me that the second half, or 3/5 of the new life, was Baba doing it himself and thus establishing its reality for humanity. He has a good bit to say about Hyderabad. Let me just show you a map once again where Hyderabad is. I know we've seen this before, but a lot of people who don't live in India might not know. Here you see Hyderabad right there, kind of central and a bit to the east in the center. You see Pune way off to the west, Mumbai over there, Hyderabad, which is now in Telangana. At that time, it was in the state of Andhra Pradesh. And Baba had been in, you see Satara over there, and a little, I won't expand it enough to show it, but to the north and west of Satara is Mahabaleshwar. So Baba shifted from Mahabaleshwar to Hyderabad at this time. And Baba made that his seat really until the beginning of the Mananash period. After Mananash began, it remained the headquarters for those who were not his companions. The women and a whole bunch of others of the servant companions in the new life continued to stay at Hyderabad. Baba himself, during Mananash, moved up north to Aurangabad and then to Mirzad, as we'll cover in future sessions. So this is where all of that is happening. Here's another map we're going to be looking at. You can see it's called Andhra Pradesh. As I say, the name is, state was broken off a few years ago, Telangana, which is what Hyderabad is in now. But you see Hyderabad down in the lower right there, and up in the left central is Ahmednagar, and right above that is Aurangabad. This is the trajectory of the Mananash period, which will be coming to next session and the session after that. When they first saw Baba, Ramju commented on, okay, I'm just going to take a second here because to find, when they first saw Baba, it was at this very beautiful mansion that had been rented for the week of this meeting. It was by a celebrated architect. I guess it's quite a beautiful place, and who had passed away not long before this. So they had a beautiful setting. Their meals were served for all the people who came. Ramju comments how back when he first came to Baba, it was nothing like this. They had to slave like coolies, and they could walk for hours in the summer heat and never get a drop of water, and Baba showed not an iota of concern. But throughout this meeting, if there was the tiniest little need, tea time, we need some tea between lunch and dinner, Baba would provide it all. So he really treated royally the people who came. By the way, this is not his companions. This is people who came to this meeting. So in this gorgeous place, so here he says about how Baba, the moment I heard that Baba had arrived, this is right after Ramju got there, I ran out of the rooms and saw him coming up the stairs. He was smiling and appeared to be very cheerful, but he was climbing the stairs too slowly for his usual spring-like gait and did look ill at ease. Baba in bad health generally spells bad weather for those who stay by his side. This is a Mandali speaking, right? After Baba took his seat in the hall reserved for the meetings and individual interviews with him, this is before the big meeting has started, of course. The first question that Baba asked those who gathered there was, "How do you find me?" According to the previous experience, that was something like the danger signal that the port authorities put up when they expect a storm to break out. With one voice, we all who were present agreed that Baba did look very much pulled down, weak, and ill. So I'm going to bring this out. Baba was in really bad health. The 100-day seclusion was just a knockout for him. I guess you had to be there to see it, but he was suffering all kinds of health problems, which is quite relevant to what he was going to undertake. So let me read this. "That is a fact," said Baba. "I'm feeling very ill. The piles trouble," that's hemorrhoids, is still there more or less. I feel a continuous gnawing pain near my diaphragm. I cannot sleep well. I do not possess the least appetite to eat anything. I have to force myself to eat a little once every 24 hours. Yet at that time, the very sight of food is nauseating. I tried my best all these days to carry out, etc., etc. I mean, this is trying to follow the doctors. Apart from regaining the health that I lost during the 100 days partial seclusion, there is no substantial improvement so far. Let us hope I do not get worse. In any case, I am determined to finish all that I have got to finish now. You all will have to help me, etc. Be careful, to help out with the whole meeting. Okay, just a little pause again. Yeah. So in these few days with Ramju and Gani and Baba Das and Adi, Baba made a bunch of comments. Baba said, "It is natural for me in my new life to feel void of all that it was natural for me to feel in my old life." His complete opposite of his old life. And Baba also said that everything he was going to say on this occasion was going to be as an ordinary man and as a philosopher, so to speak, not out of his gnosis. Now, 3 days later, some more people came. And they did raise the question about when was Baba going to give darshan. That same day when so-and-so indirectly tried to Baba's attention to the need for darshan for the public at large. See, Baba hadn't been doing that throughout the whole new life. Baba said, darshan is worth giving when those for whom it is meant, a darshan is really the darshan. What does that mean? Seeing God, right? Face to face. The God-determined step is for that end in view. Whether there will be the darshan or not is a matter that at the moment rests on the will of God. Now look at this statement. This shows how far things have progressed. On the 26th, Baba said, I am going to see the old Meher Baba or go blind. Wow. He used to despise the old Meher Baba. He used to despise he said, I hate the old life. Now he is undertaking a step that will lead to his re-merging and reuniting with the old life, Meher Baba. That is the only remedy for all my bimaris. These are illnesses. He's really afflicted with every kind of health problem. And the result of that remedy will prove to be the remedy for all the bimaris of you all. You have helped me carrying out so many important things, but you have no idea of the real importance of all the work that I have been doing these days. That can only be known as the result of the God-determined step that I am going to take on October 16th. Now get this, according to what I feel at the moment, these 7 days that you have passed with me are as good as having passed 700 years of your lives with me. So this is really a momentous occasion. Baba is telling them. He also said that in the past, he used to have to take into account, say, the standing and the prestige of certain people he needed to work with. And, all kinds of people would come into his orbit. But he said in this new life, it's not relevant anymore. In the Mananash period, I need not take into consideration the prestige and position of any individual, even if that work remains undone, because the result depends upon the will of God. And when once that is manifested one way or another, there will remain nothing to be done by me or for me. For me now, Jan Parbani Hai, i.e., my life is at stake. I want to read some of this. Baba's trying to indicate that this is really critical work. and he could very well fail at it. Suppose that someone who has leprosy from head to foot is declared to be incurable, and thus believes himself to be fast approaching an inevitable death. What else would he care for except the end itself, be it one way or the other? But then, death is no end to anything, although people commit suicide and give up their lives because of the frustration. The following words of Hafez give some idea of what I am trying to convey to you. Ya Jan Razad Bajanan, Ya Jan Zetan Barazad. I'm sorry, I don't speak Persian. Either the soul has got to reach the oversoul, or the soul has got to get out of the body. In other words, I have to complete this work or die. Still, that is not quite what I have to say. To take another example, suppose that I am suffering from physical disabilities and afflictions of a type that allow me to move very little. Earlier, this time he gave the example of suffering from acute leprosy. Yet I have decided to climb Mount Everest. To stretch the simile to its utmost length, I might just as well say that I have to attain the zenith of strength at a time when I am at the zenith of weakness in an impossibly short period. Impossible in the sense that what could be achieved in 4 crores of lives, a crore is 10 million, so 40 million lives, is to be achieved in 4 months. Yet all this gives only an incomplete idea of what is really at stake. Okay, so this is really a critical and most difficult piece of work that Baba has to complete. So on June 28th, the larger group arrived, and here's a photo they took at the end of the whole session so you can get an idea of what the group was like. We could go through a lot of the names you would know. I won't take the time. You can see Baba there, and right behind him was Dr. Ghani, who did some of the interpreting. By the way, Ghani died very soon after this, a month and a half after this event. But the purpose of the meeting, Baba said, was for him to make his certain declaration, and the reason that they had been called to the meeting was to serve as witnesses to it. That was why they were there. So here's the declaration Baba made, and then there's an extensive corollary, as it's called. So this was sent out as a circular after the event. So the 28th June 1951, Baba said, "In the presence of God, bearing in my heart all the perfect ones of all times as witness, I declare that by the help and will of God, I will definitely take this step of annihilation on October 16th of this year. God helped me to do the seclusion work of the 100 days to my entire satisfaction, and I feel absolutely confident that God will help me to attain the old life Meher Baba state by February 16th, 1952, and to manifest universally. So now this will be the part of the goal of this work, to recover the old life Meher Baba state combined with the new life state of humility and weakness. I want every one of you who is present here as witness to this declaration to fast for 24 hours on tea and water on the 16th of October, beginning from 8 o'clock in the morning of that day. Now here's the corollary. I'm going to read chunks of this. Major statement, what God has determined. God has determined in my mind the irrevocable step that I'm going to take on October 16th. And this will run, he gives an idea of the calendar of it. The step God wants me to take is one of complete and absolute annihilation. Susan was bringing up the question at the end of last time, what does mananash mean? Man means mind, and nash means annihilation. Very early on, Baba talked about satyanashi, absolute complete annihilation. And the companions at that time didn't like the word. They had other words for it. But nope, that's the word Baba wanted. You see, the same root, nash, is there. There it's sat, true annihilation. But now it's mano, the annihilation of the mind. I am at this moment solely and entirely in the new life. And it is purely from this new life stand of an ordinary human being that I tell you about this annihilation. This step compels me to take on complete mental annihilation during the process between October 16th and February 12th. That means that during this period of mental annihilation, I will, in the natural course of events, be facing physical annihilation as well, without my actually seeking it. During the last month at Merazad in January 1952, the doctors were very, very concerned about his health. His head was much too hot. They really felt that he could die. So this is a theme that Baba really did bring up. We don't know what went on in this seclusion work or this kind of work, but it was very physically taxing. So then he gives 4 options of what could happen. I won't read all 4 of them, but I will read the first. Option A, this is the good outcome. I will gain complete mental annihilation and yet be alive physically. And this will mean that I will not only attain the old life Meher Baba state, but also manifest it universally. It will also mean a super revolutionizing in the lives of all connected with me, and even those not connected with me, as fundamentally I will then be connected with each and every one. This seems to me to be anticipating his avataric role, except that its effect will vary in accordance with the strength of their connection with me. Okay, that's outcome 1. That's the desired outcome. The second one, with mental annihilation, my physical body might fall. So he might complete Mananash, but also drop his physical body. And that would mean the end of everything and the beginning of everything. So for people connected with him, the revolutionary change would happen, but there wouldn't be any personal manifestation. Outcome C, before mental annihilation is gained, my physical body might fall, and that would mean we would all be where we are. I might physically die before completing annihilation, in which case, no progress. We're stuck where we are. And the last one, by the end of February, mental annihilation might not be gained, and physically I might be alive. In other words, I might fail. I might fail to achieve Mananash. And that would mean the end to all. Then I would free everyone from having any direct connection with me, leaving to them to lead any kind of life they choose. In other words, go your own way. I failed. So Baba's really talking about the hazards and possible different outcomes. But then there are a bunch of other statements. God wants me to take this step, and I am absolutely certain that he will help me to gain this mental annihilation by February 12th. With this inner conviction, I will plunge deeply into this act of annihilation. And he asks God for God's help in this. This statement, as you see, is a developed one. He starts talking about the process, and then he talks about his companions, and he opened it up to admission by any of the people attending this meeting. But he said, look, don't kid yourself. So he says, anyone who wants to go through this dying process with me can join me. But I want every one of you to fully understand the magnitude of your mental preparation needed to stand by such a decision. I want you to bear in mind the difficulties accosted at the start of the new life in 1949, the obstacles in your way, and the hindrances in mine, and I want no repetition of that. There can't be any more screw-ups now. At this stage of the new life, there's no more scope for that. If you choose to accompany me from a mere emotional impulse on your part, it will prove disastrous. If you come with me, it will actually be to face all kinds of untold difficulties and inconceivable hardships. And he goes on, starvation, etc., etc., etc. The servants who are with him already, the servant companions in the new life, what were there, 8 or 9 or 10 of them at this point, have the choice either to join him and stay back in Hyderabad. Okay, taking a pause. Okay, number 11, Baba says, even if there is only one of you accompanying me, I shall be quite pleased and satisfied. And even if many choose to come with me, I will not mind. Okay? He's opening the door again. But those accompanying me must be prepared to be able to stand everything and anything under all and every circumstances, implicitly obeying my spiritual, my every order without hoping for any kind of reward, spiritual or material. They must expect no help of any kind from me, but on the contrary, will be expected to help me. So Baba was going to take the submissions, take the answers from those who were there, and among that he would select the ones he was going to take with him. So that was another purpose of this meeting. Okay, coming back to this for a moment, we'll take a little interlude. So that was part of the drama that followed, that was a big part of this meeting, as all those who attended had to decide what they wanted to do. And Baba began a discourse on Mananash, and we're going to be reviewing a good bit of that. But Baba said, the fact remains that for good or bad, I'm definitely going to take this God-determined step. After a short pause, he added, it will be for the best, because at 3:30 this morning, God revealed to me that I was going to regain the state of Meher Baba in the old life. Okay, so now we have a real different picture of where all of this is going. And then Baba said, for God's sake, don't all of you decide to join me on the assumption that I shall say no to all of you. More on this meeting. Sorry, let me just take a little break. Yeah, so Baba is now talking about who to take with him. God knows how infinitely serious the matter is for me, and there must not be the least possibility of any hindrance to me in carrying out this God-determined step. No more boja funds or even minor slip-ups. Last night, I even felt it would be best to set out all by myself. I then remembered my limitations, such as my silence, my failing health, etc., that forced me to admit that I must not fool myself, and that it was not really possible for me to go alone. I therefore have to consider your offers very carefully, and I shall let you know my decisions later on. And it's just a few stray remarks that Baba made. On June 28th, Ramju records, there are 99% chances for me to drop off my body. That's for him to physically die. But because of the 1% chance of achieving success desired by me, I feel 100% sure of achieving the same. 90% chance of failure, but because there's 1%, I'm 100% sure that I'll succeed. June 29th. I will live the whole of the new life for me in 4 months, and that I will thus end it for myself. And on the 30th, having made the declaration before God, in the presence of the perfect ones of all times, I feel very happy. I hope you shared in my happiness. I also feel that in February, the happiness that knows no ends will be achieved. And during these same 2 days that Baba, or this day and the next, Baba gave a significant discourse. And as I've mentioned before, this is something that there wasn't very much of during the new life, almost none of it. But he did do it on this occasion, and it was quite a major one. And actually, I'm going to show you, this is Ramju's rendering of it. I'm going to give the version in Bao's book. It's a little bit more readable on this, but the topic is Mananash, i.e. annihilation of mind, or katame-e nafs. And Mananash means mind annihilation, annihilation of the mind. And here he gives a Sufi expression, a Sufi rendering of the same thing in Urdu. Khatama means an ending or a conclusion or a termination. And nafs is a big Sufi term for the false ego. And this discourse of Baba's, the only other discourse, what I would call true discourse, that in the new life was the one he gave when he stepped back into the old life for 4 hours. We read that Baba's sermon. This is the second, and I can't think of any others. And at the end of this, Baba did say, I've been explaining this to you as an ordinary man, an ordinary philosopher. In other words, this isn't coming out of divine knowledge. But Baba brought up some really major themes in it. And the first half of it is differentiating between the mind and the ego. The mind is altogether false. And the mind is born once and dies once. In fact, Ghani asked them the question about Christians and Muslims and certain other faiths believe you're born once and die once. And Baba said, yes, that's true in the sense that the mind is born once and the mind dies once. The ego is different from that. The ego identifies with the mind, but with the death of the mind, the ego is transformed. The ego is real. So the ego, I understand to be that I principle, the real self in me. In Advaita Vedanta, of course, the Atma, the real self, is taken to be identical with God or Brahman. So this is the same fundamental understanding. So you see there's a difference. There is a false ego that identifies with the mind, but with the annihilation of the mind, the real ego gets established in self-knowledge. That's a lot of what he's going to explain. And the mind is largely bound by its accumulation of sanskaras. So I'm going to read bits and pieces of this. This is the first half, but then he comes into another topic later. In fact, Baba began this discourse on one day and he concluded it on the next day. Mind changes according to the sanskaras, impressions, but it is not transformed. See, mind doesn't get transformed. Mind is of the false, and it remains false. Being false, it can be annihilated. Today you think, I am a man. If tomorrow your body falls and you get a new body of a woman, you will think, I am a woman. This I of being a man or a woman is false, and it continues to think so until there is real transformation. Mind is never transformed, right? It's false. It can only be annihilated. Mananash, the annihilation of the mind. Ego is transformed only once. Ego is of the real, and it shall ever remain real. By ego, I mean your very being as astitva, the real I. See, your very existence itself. In Vedanta, Sat Chit Anant, this would be Sat, which is related to astitva. Ego by itself is not false. Mind makes one think so. Mind creates worlds, delusions, and illusions, yet it is never one in itself. Ego as witness consciousness. Witness consciousness, right? This is very Vedantic, by the way. Saksin is a word they use for that. Is always one in itself. The real ego that each of us has is apparently bound by the mind, which makes the real ego think of itself as false. Mind makes you think birth and death, happiness and misery are real, and nothing can be more false than this. So the mind, he says below, is made up of false impressions. Mind may make you say, I am God, but not make you feel I am God. This is one of the delusions that can come from spiritual learning, where you start to think, well, I'm God, but it's only a thought. It's not the actual experience. The only recourse is that mind has to annihilate itself by itself. So Hafiz says, Tu khud hijabe khudi Hafiz, uzmian burkez. Hafiz, remove yourself, for you yourself are the veil. So this is, Baba's sort of clarifying what Mananash is going to be, right? He's not going to annihilate the ego. The ego is ultimately real. He's going to annihilate the mind. But then how to remove yourself? And now the second half of this discourse is on the three great paths. This is well understood in Hinduism. The Bhagavad Gita is on this subject. It's a masterful exposition on it. The three great paths of karma, jnana, and bhakti. Karma is action, jnana is knowledge, and bhakti is devotion or love in its higher aspects. And Baba had given many discourses on this and accepted this fundamental formulation. You'll even find it in Infinite Intelligence. There's a lot on this. In the discourses, he comes back to it. In fact, Baba gave the metaphysical foundation. I'll just mention this and not develop on it. That they're based on God's nature as power, knowledge, and bliss. So power is the basis of karma yoga, knowledge is the basis of jnana yoga, and bliss is the basis for bhakti yoga. So that's what this is going to be about. And he's saying here, the perfect masters laid down different paths that subsequently direct one towards destroying the mind while retaining consciousness. These paths are based mainly on action, meditation, and love. These are the three great paths, right? The masters knew that actions which have false ego and mind full of impressions as its background, instead of destroying the mind, feed it. And there is no escape from action, right? Try not to act for 1 minute in the sense of no flickers of movements within your mind. I can't even do it for 2 seconds together, right? So we have to act. So some masters demonstrated the path of actionless action. By the way, one of the perfect masters who it strikes me as being of this type was someone we encountered during Baba's stay in Delhi back in the previous May, June. Nizamuddin Auliya strikes me as a karma yoga type perfect master. Seems to me anyway. So, by the way, here's a photo of Baba at this meeting. You can see them all gathered. Maybe he was giving this discourse, or maybe he was talking about something else. I don't know. But then Baba goes on to talk about the difficulties of actually doing this. Okay, 1 minute as I find the passage. So the next day, Baba resumed with this. Yeah, so now Baba resumed with this discussion of the three paths. And what strikes me about his analysis is that they're basically impossible. In principle, they lead to Mananash, but basically you can't do them. So Baba says, all paths lead toward the achievement of the one and the same goal, the final annihilation, nash, or fana, effacement of the mind. Now he says, let's start with the path of action. And the idea is, actions leave impressions, and impressions feed the mind. So for the false ego to be transformed into the real, there is no other remedy than Mananash. So masters wanted actions to be done in a way so that the effect of impressions becomes impotent. Hence, no result, no binding, right? This is going to be karma yoga. And for example, a scorpion generally wags its tail and stings. It is natural for it to sting someone. What is result? Suffering, right? So if you remove the sting, it doesn't have that effect. So the masters thought of the following remedy for actions: to act in a way so that the results do not bind, no impressions are created. But for this, it has to be done completely selflessly. But now Baba goes about into how this can be done, but why you really can't do it. There are three ways by which actions performed do not bind. One is to act, but absolutely without having any self-interest. To act without thought of performing the act, such as doing selfless service, there can be no doubt that leads to actions without restrictions as intended by the masters. But the practical difficulty in doing such acts continuously That is, always to be like that. So he goes on to say, you may quickly, the mind intervenes and thinks, I'm really doing kind of a nice thing here. I'm helping this person a lot. And the ego jumps in and superimposes itself and thus gets bound by it. And it's almost impossible not to do that. While even with the best of motives and without any self-interest, when leaders ask others to make sacrifices, the reactions of the actions of the others fall on the leaders. Now look at this. While serving others, even the sense of feeling pity should not be there. So if you're serving people suffering and you feel pity for that, even that binds you. And so then Baba, the second path is to dedicate everything to the master. This dedication must be constant and continual without a moment's break. But it's very, very difficult. The third way is to act to obey the orders of the perfect master. This too is not so simple. So in other words, Baba is saying the path of action is so difficult that basically nobody can do it. Some masters have chalked out the way of defeating the mind through the mind itself. through meditation. And so now Baba starts to go through how this process happens. And he even says states of samadhi or hal would be the Sufi term for it, actually doesn't accomplish anything. Because after a period of bliss, when you come out of it, you resume right exactly at the very same point you were when you went into it. In fact, the last thought you have before going into a samadhi will be the first thought you have coming out of it. So if you go into samadhi thinking about money, the first thought you have coming out of it is money. What good has it done? Baba elsewhere says it's kind of like a vacation. So you have a nice time, you earn money, you earn credit, have a vacation, and then you're back into the slogging of it again. And so Baba gives various expedients in meditation and goes into the difficulties of it. The third path is of bhakti, devotion. When one is totally devoted to God, he forgets himself and his mind has no chance to form new binding impressions. But even though the path of devotion, even through the path of devotion, complete and continual self-forgetfulness is practically impossible. And so no mananash. These are good. These help to loosen up the bindings to the ego. But really to achieve mananash thum is almost impossible. Now this is me talking now. It strikes me that Baba has explained the problem. The ego has to remain in the mind to be annihilated. And there are three great paths that have been chalked out by the masters for doing this. And they're all so hard that almost no one can do this. I'm thinking, this is my interpretation, this is Meher Baba now as an ordinary man looking at the problem of how to get to God. And the paths that have been laid down are too difficult. So I am thinking, Baba didn't exactly say this, he was going to get to the very root of the problem. To hell with the paths, he was going to annihilate the mind itself. And by means of doing that, would break the logjam, open up these paths for all of humanity. Again, Baba didn't say this, but this is what strikes me after reading this discourse, which is a beautiful review of of the three great paths, but also a very, we could say, pessimistic one. Can I say that? It's like, well, these are the paths, but I look at those pitfalls and I think, well, it would take me about 5 seconds to fall into that pitfall. And then once I got out of that one, I would fall into the next one. I can't do these things. To do actions without thinking that I'm doing it, to actually be devoted to Baba without having my ego come in, my mind, I guess it is, come in and obstruct things without getting upset and just love him all the time. It's impossible. You can't do it. So we are all, Baba talks about, okay, I'm going to take a little break here. Yeah. So coming to the conclusion of this discourse, Baba says, I am absolutely full of weaknesses in my new life. This is his state. By the way, even in January of 1952, Baba was saying the same thing. I'm full of weaknesses. And in spite of my present helplessness, I have got 4 months in hand to achieve the annihilation of the mind. It is like a lame person wanting to reach the top of Everest in 4 months. But I feel 100% confident that God will help me to achieve this. Ask God from the bottom of your hearts to help me in achieving this annihilation as I want it to be achieved. I feel 100% certain that God will help me to do this. So this was the discourse that he gave. And Baba said, it is as an ordinary man that I have tried to explain the mananash to be achieved by an ordinary man. And this is a little comment that Ghani brought up. It is equally possible for one interpretation or another to prove correct. Ghani asked me why and how I could achieve Mananash, because, as believed by him, I have already achieved it in the old life. I mean, an obvious question. Hazrat Babajan annihilated your mind and gave you God realization. So why is it that you have to do it again? Okay, Ghani was a very smart guy, and I would bet anything he was trying to provoke Baba into saying what this work is really about. I mean, my understanding, it's an avataric undertaking that he undertook for all humanity. And that's its significance. He can only do that at this stage of his life. I'm sure Ghani was quite capable of understanding things like this. So he would ask a question just to needle Baba into saying something. But Baba said, but being my childhood chum, I have pardoned him for putting that question to me. So Baba completely dodged the question. He wasn't going to be baited into talking about it. So there's the real substance of the big things that happened. But just as to the closing out the meeting, you know, it's so characteristic of Baba to lighten things. So Baba had them put on a 1 hour costume display kind of show. So they put up a stage. I'll read some of these little things. For the opener, Dr. Ghani strode out on the stage dressed as a Pathan, a warrior of North India, to loud, resounding applause. Then Savak Kotwal, one of Baba's old disciples, gave a beautiful dance, and nobody knew he could do this. Keshav Nigam dressed up as a woman and started behaving very flirtatiously towards Baba, glancing behind a veil and trying to attract him. Then Rustam Kaka, he was one of the old people from Ahmednagar. I remember him very well from the 70s, did an imitation of Adi's father, Kansab, who was a big shot in Ahmednagar, making use of the telephone. Let me read a little bit of this to give an idea. You notice, you see, Baba's lightening everything up. His first experience of a telephone when it was installed in his office. Adi's father, who was a man of self-importance and very impatient, was captured remarkably by Rustam, who, simulating an incoming call, picked up the phone and immediately put the wrong end to his ear. When he couldn't hear anything from the caller, he shouted and cursed at the blasted phone. Then, simulating a long-distance call from Bombay. I remember back in those days when you got a long-distance call, everything stopped and all business would stop and everybody would focus on these calls because they were so difficult to put through. He picked up the receiver, but suddenly he decided to have a pinch of snuff. So he put the receiver back in its cradle. When he picked the phone up again, he heard, "I'm sorry, sir, your connection is broken. There's no one to talk with you." Rustam then imitated Kansab by yelling, "No one to talk with me? I've paid for this damn phone, and if it's not for conversation, what the hell is it for?" Baba was greatly amused at Rustam's impersonation, as was everyone else. And then Daka Felker impersonated this ridiculous tailor, taking these absurd measurements for something and then telling them, "Your grandson can pick it up," and others will take 2 generations to finish it. So you get the spirit, with a lot of laughter and a lot of good fellowship and good camaraderie. And then Baba, on the next day, took them on a tour of some of the great sites in Hyderabad. It's a very historic and very memorable place. They had a delightful tea at an expensive hotel, and the meeting came to an end. So there is a summary of a really major 10 days in the New Life and in Meher Baba's life that enunciated the next phase. Baba said that between the beginning of July and October 16th, he was going to have to prepare for the new life. It was going to take that long. October 16th, it would begin. He would begin with time in a cave in Hyderabad. That we'll come to that next time. Then traveling up to Aurangabad, and they wound up concluding it back at Merazad in December and January. So that will be the remainder of the new life that we'll cover in the next 2 sessions. Okay, Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, that was so interesting. You know, as you were talking about the time that Baba had that declaration, is there anything particularly that you felt that was really strong and powerful about that?
You know, Baba was expressing, on the one hand, the impossibility of his doing it, but at the same time, his absolute confidence that he would succeed. And God, you know, at 3:30 in the morning, Baba told him that he would succeed in regaining the old life Meher Baba state. For those of you who have been, you know, on this voyage from the beginning, I mean, that was unthinkable at the beginning of the new life for Baba to talk about the old life in a favorable way, let alone the possibility of merging with it again. Now it is part of the goal, although as we'll see, it's not just a return to the old life, it's a return to the old life conjoined with the new life. We'll see that coming up. So there's a whole new tone and spirit of a goal to the new life, or I won't say a goal, a consummation of the new life. And this work Baba's been doing over this year. But at the same time, the acute sense that this was really going to take it out of Baba, and there was every likelihood of his failing and even dying in the process. And there was absolutely no scope for screw-ups. At the beginning of the new life, there were screw-ups all over the place. Well, there's no space for that now. So this is really, it's new, but it's kind of the peak intensity of the new life. So the companions who were there with Baba certainly had to go on doing their part in the new life, but their part was to help Baba. It's really up to him now. Doesn't it sound like that? Who else could do this? Who else can do? Would you know how to do Mananash? I mean, it's ridiculous to even ask the question. But Baba was going to have to, he's outlined the impossibility of it and said he has to do it, and he will do it.
Within 4 months.
Within 4 months. He said this ought to take 4 crores, and a crore is 10 million. It ought to take 40 million lifetimes would be entailed. And his health was terrible. His spirit was terrible. We'll see this right into January. He's still saying this. He's at the state of maximum weakness. And out of this state of maximum weakness, he has to achieve the supreme power, you could say. So it's a great drama that's getting set up.
The meaning of Manonash and the annihilation of the mind, I think that although as you know, people who follow Baba and love him, we try to imagine like what that would be like, but you're even thinking of trying to imagine with your mind is kind of contrary to what that even is, right?
Yeah, it's an unimaginable state. That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah. So Baba gave these 3 terms. I just noticed today this one, Khatima e Nafs, as what Ramju gives as the Sufi Urdu equivalent to that. So that's an interesting phrase to have. If you go to that chart 11 in God Speaks, the one that's in the second edition, the big fold out, Mananash is there. and it is given as the equivalent of nirvana. But this point of the distinction between the ego and the mind, in that chart 11 in God Speaks, you will find Mananash there. This is the chart created by Led Dimphel and approved by Baba, sort of on that mid part between God states on the upper section and illusion states below that. And Mananash is equated with nirvana, actually. That's the Hindu Buddhist term that he gives as equivalent. But Mananash has a different kind of actually Mananash is a Hindu term too, but it has a richer meaning in a way, because it's not just emptiness, it's that annihilation of mind process. Yeah. But I've never seen anywhere else where Baba so fully explained the difference between the mind and the ego. The ego is the I. That's real. Baba's not attacking your real self. What Mananash attacks is the identification of that with the mind. And that's what he's going to do. That's what he's going to take on.
Also, just out of my own curiosity, coming from both a Christian and Buddhist background personally, and understanding, at least in the Buddhist tradition, that we're here to discover our true nature and our true self. And with what Baba talks about with the annihilation of the mind and us not associating ourselves with our mind, how do we parse out the thoughts that come out? And are we to identify that our thoughts are not part of our true nature?
No, it's a good question and a very difficult one. It seems like maybe this is not a satisfactory answer. I don't know, but it seems like the new life aspect of this has generally been on the negation of the negation. The structure of conditions and rules and activities that would destroy any movement of the false self. But Baba, in his discourse of the new life, did not speak very much about the affirmative and the positive. I've mentioned that. Like, there's not a whole lot of talk about love. Here he brings up the ego as real, but during the Mananash period, you're not going to hear much more about it, or about the real self, or how to merge or unite with it. And I think it's really in the period that comes after the Mananash that comes more into the picture. So after Mananash culminates at the end of January, Baba started entering into the free life. And there we're going to hear a new kind of discourse where these things get talked about more. People might not like this, that I keep saying that the conditions of the new life are almost entirely negative, but I think it's just an objective fact. You read them and it's don't do this and don't do that. And I keep asserting, and I do feel it to be true, the new life itself is not negative, but these are the framework of conditions that make the new life possible. So now Baba's going to go about through the annihilation of the mind, and what he doesn't really speak about very much is what happens then. So that's really not very much of an answer. I'm a bit baffled by this myself.
Well, thank you so much, Board. This is it's such an interesting, and I don't want to say the word mind bending because we're not. It's in some ways hard not to do certain kinds of mental gymnastics to try to get around this. How many of us are programmed to
Yep.
to try to think our way through and understand and make sense of this.
Right.
It's also if Bob is going through this mononash period, and for us to even try to imagine or do any mental gymnastics is
Yeah,
pointless
yeah,
too. But we want to also understand that
yeah.
he went through this process. So it's a
Yes,
conundrum.
yeah. No, it is. My work is intellectual to a large extent, studying Baba's words and editing them. So I can speak for this point of view. I do think for people who take an interest in these things, there is a value to doing what you've just described, to trying to, what does this mean? How do you annihilate the mind? Because it's a good way of getting into a position where your mind gets defeated and crushed. And that's good. That's a good thing. If one understands that, it's very helpful. In fact, it can sort of give little glimpses or little flashes of things. That's my experience.
That's great. Well, in the next session, my understanding with the session 14 is that you'll be going over the inauguration of Mononash. So can you
Yes.
share with us what we're going to expect with the next session?
Yes, we're moving away. We've had a lot of messages and discourses, actually, in the last session and this one also. Not so much in the next. There was a 2.5 month preparatory period where they set up the program for the upcoming months. So from July and August, September, they got ready, and we don't have as much information actually about that period. As I said earlier, there was no, the diary got discontinued. For this meeting in Hyderabad, we have luckily this wonderful account by Ramju, so we have a lot of information about that. We don't have quite as much about the prep period, but they were at Hyderabad the whole time. But then it leads to the actual beginning of Mononash. And to really quickly anticipate, Baba wound up spending about a week in this cave in Hyderabad. If ever you go to Hyderabad, be sure to go there. It's one of the great places of the Advent. It's a very memorable place. And he did certain work there, a lot of it with these 5 models, which some of you will be acquainted with, which are in the museum now. And then Baba, with his companions, there were 5 of them, Gustaji, Baijul, Pendu, Erich, and Daulat Singh. Daulat Singh was back. Traveled by foot and by bus and by bullock cart from Hyderabad, stopping here and there along the way, up to Aurangabad. Some of you may have been to Aurangabad. What is it, maybe 80 miles north of Ahmednagar or so? Probably the places you would have gone to would be the Ellora Caves, which are outside Aurangabad. But Baba did a lot of his Mononash work there, and then traveled down in late November to Merazad, and it was there that he culminated the new life. I have some fairly newly discovered stuff from notes Erich took that will be there in that session when we get to December, January 1951-52, that are pretty amazing. Like what you were asking, about trying to puzzle how you would do this. What the heck was Baba actually doing? And he's not going to say very much about what his inner experiences were. But in these notes that Erich took, actually he does, and it's quite extraordinary. So there's something to look forward to. Not in the next session, but in the one after next. A little teaser here.
That's right. Well, we've got so much rich content that we still yet have with regard to, I know, all the things that you've prepared for. So
Yeah.
with our session 14, the actual kind of inauguration of Mononash, and then of course the
Begins.
culmination of Mononash, and then the free life and all of that afterwards. With
Mm,
Baba's time in the Mononash cave, I know you'll go into more detail next time, but
mm.
you mentioned that it's a place to go. And for those who have not gone, what would be a reason that you would feel that people need to go? Is it for just curious?
I don't know how to express it, but there's a real charge in that spot. It's an amazing sort of a place. It's up on top of this big hill, and the Hyderabad group has, done a lot to protect it, and they have a lot of events there. If you go to Hyderabad, people will certainly take you there. But I don't know, it feels like something momentous happened at this place. It's an amazing spot. One of the great Baba spots in India, wouldn't you say, Naman?
Yes.
Yeah. One of the handful of really, really great spots. It's worth going to Hyderabad just for that. Baba really liked Hyderabad a lot, by the way. I didn't really go in, but in his little booklet, Ramju really talks about how Baba said it has a wonderful balance of the material and the spiritual, and this descends from the ancient past. So Baba really liked this place,
Mhm.
the city.
Yeah, it really does feel like, and I've had a chance to
Mm.
go to a number of the different caves that Baba spent some time
Uh-huh.
in, and I think that that was a really special place also to be able to
Did you
visit.
go to the Mananash Cave?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. We'll have some photos of it. Yeah.
yeah, wonderful. Well, Ward, this has been yet again really wonderful to go into this deep dive of this time at Hyderabad in 1951. We are very grateful that you take this time to be able to share all of this with everyone. And just before we end, I'd like to be able to
Mm.
also just share with everyone who is watching this that we are very grateful for your interest and your support to be watching this. And here at the center, we're grateful that we're able to have this type of platform to be able to share about Baba's life and message. So, with your dedication to doing so much loving research and sharing of what you've uncovered has been really valuable. So, thank you so much, Ward.
Thank you for providing the occasion, for being such a wonderful host of this event, and to the center for taking the initiative to make these kinds of things possible.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're so grateful for that. Well, all right. Well, I think we've come to the end of this particular session. And for everyone who wants to see prior sessions, they will be available on the Mayor Center website and possibly on our social media as well. So you'll be able to review from the first session onwards. Each of the 17 sessions will be recorded and be put onto the website so that everyone has access. So please feel free to, go through all of them. Let us know if you have any questions, and we'd be more than happy to be able to help with any kind of Q&A after
Mm.
sessions too. Okay, well, everyone, thanks so much for your time here, and thank you, Ward. Thank you, Naman, from behind the camera, and we look forward to seeing everyone in the next session. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Thank you.